Hey guys, it's Ivy. I'm here with my dad today, back in the kitchen. We are gonna sing a song that we wrote called This Will Pass. 1, 2, 3, 4.
This will pass. The things that we are fearing in the night that leave our bodies wide awake till morning light. This will pass. The things that we've been hearing in the day, the things that never seem to go away. This will pass. This will pass. Time will tell what we could have done and what went well. Although we almost lost, we never fell. We'll look back at everything we lost along the way, at all the things we never got to say. This will pass. This will pass. Along the way, there's things we'll need to know. Along the way, we'll have to take it slow. Along the way, there'll be some letting go. Along the way, this will pass, and we'll find the thing we needed all along. We'll find that we knew just how to be strong. This will pass, and soon we'll be together once again. We'll learn to make it better, and then this will pass. This will pass. Things we'll need to know. Along the way, we'll have to take it slow. Along the way, there'll be some letting go. Along the way, this will pass, and we'll find the thing we needed all along. We'll find that we knew just how to be strong. This will pass. This will pass. This will pass.
What you gonna do with this precious life?
Fire, remind me how to burn completely.
Fire, remind me how to burn completely.
Rain, show me how to let go and fall.
Rain, show me how to let go and fall.
The earth will receive you.
The earth will receive you.
The fire consume you.
Fire consume you.
Bring all your darkness, bring all your light. What you gonna do with this precious life?
Bring all your darkness, bring all your light. What you gonna do with this precious life?
Fire, remind me how to burn completely.
Fire, remind me how to burn completely.
Rain, show me how to let go and fall.
Rain, show me how to let go and fall.
The earth will receive you.
The earth will receive you.
The fire consume you.
Fire consume you.
Bring all your darkness, bring all your light. What you gonna do with this precious life?
Bring all your darkness, bring all your light. What you gonna do with this precious life?
Fire, remind me how to burn completely.
Fire, remind me how to burn completely.
Rain, show me how to let go and fall.
Rain, show me how to let go and fall.
The earth will receive you.
The earth will receive you.
The fire consume you.
Fire consume you.
Bring all your darkness, bring all your light. What you gonna do with this precious life?
Bring all your darkness, bring all your light. What you gonna do with this precious life?
Good morning and welcome to our virtual gathering, the Westside Unitarian Universalist Congregation. I'm Lisa Reitzis, a member of the worship planning team and your worship associate for today. Joining me behind the scenes, but making the scenes possible, is an extraordinary technical team, making sure that this worship service is delivered to you virtually, as gracefully as possible. I'm delighted to introduce today's speaker, Jennifer Disotell. Jennifer is a 14-year member of Westside and exhausted mother of 3. For the last 2 years, she has been a member of the worship planning team, serving as a worship associate, and I'm honored to be her colleague in this work. Jennifer comes to us today as a conflict resolution expert who manages an agency whose sole purpose is to help groups resolve conflict through mediation, facilitation, and training. Today, she will introduce some thoughts about why people remain rooted in misinformation that polarizes and how we might be able to impact the things that divide us with everyday conversation. Whoever you are, wherever you have come from, whatever the color of your skin, whomever or however you love, however your body moves or your brain works, however you identify, you are welcome in this faith community. We gather today from many locations, but we acknowledge that our congregation resides on the traditional territory of the Duwamish people. In this acknowledgement, we recognize the deep cultural heritage that is imbued in the mountains, valleys, waterways, and shorelines that surround us all. May we nurture our relationships with our coastal Salish neighbors, especially the Duwamish people, and our shared responsibilities to this part of the earth. Let us take a moment to offer humble respect for this place and its peoples. Our opening words are adapted from a prayer by Lynn Cox, who is the interim minister at the UU Church of Silver Spring, Maryland. Spirit of life, ever adapting and renewing, we come together this morning with yearnings that do not match. We yearn for stability, for even one moment of feeling like we know what is going on, for the ability to predict and prepare for what is coming next. Yet we also yearn for change. We ache for a world that turns aside from racism, violence, dehumanization, and disregard for suffering. We pray for a change in the illness, grief, isolation, incarceration, and vulnerability of our loved ones. We reach for connections that will remind us that we are worthy as we are, and we reach for connections that will help us to become our best selves. Hold us in the heart of both and cradle us in the mystery. The flaming chalice is the beacon of our Unitarian Universalist faith, the symbol of our determination to form beloved community, and the light of hope that calls us into action to heal the world. Our chalice lighter today is Laura Rodriguez.
In 2014, Laura Rodriguez says she was feeling lost. A yoga retreat motivated her to seek out a spiritual community for herself and her kids. Laura had learned about the Unitarian Church years before while living in D.C., and her fundamentalist aunt warned her not to go because they believed in crystals or something. She took a leap of faith with a visit to Westside. After hearing the minister say, "You don't have to believe in God to be spiritual," Laura wished she had come sooner. Her son Samuel begged to come back, and Laura reports it took her almost a year to be able to sit through an entire service without crying. She felt physically panicked just being in a church building, and the welcoming words were such a contrast to the burdensome messages from her childhood. Laura says the voices from her formative years had scarred her in ways she hadn't realized. She has been a WSUU member for 6 years, and Laura has enjoyed the positive messages, the inclusion of all, and our work in the wider community. She is grateful that her kids will grow up with messages of self-love and guidance to be good citizens. Laura says, "This church may have literally saved my life. During one of the darkest periods of my life, a few years ago, the support I received made it possible for me to limp along until I found the light again." Laura feels blessed to be a part of this spiritual family, and she looks forward to continuing her journey here.
Our chalice lighting words are by the Reverend Cynthia Landrum. As we kindle this flame, may it spark in each of us connection and commitment to this living tradition and to each other. Our opening hymn is "Let Freedom Span Both East and West." The lyrics are by Unitarian minister Jacob Trapp, written in 1932 after he attended a peace rally in Salt Lake City. The music is by Harry T. Burley, a Black classical composer who arranged this tune from an African-American spiritual. And now let us join together in body or spirit to sing.
Let freedom span both east and west, and love both south and north, in universal fellowship throughout the whole wide earth. In beauty, wonder everywhere, let us communion find. Compassion be the golden cord close binding humankind. Beyond all barriers of race, of color, caste, or creed, let us make friendship, human worth, our common faith and deed. Then east and west will meet and share, and south shall build with north, one human commonwealth of good throughout the whole wide earth.
Thank you, Scott. Welcome again to our virtual gathering of the Westside Unitarian Universalist Congregation. If you're with us for the first time, we are so glad that you found us during this complex time. Please contact us via our website, wsuu.org, so that we can send you our weekly electronic newsletter, The Westside Week, which contains information about upcoming worship services and other virtual activities. At Westside, we aspire to be warm and welcoming to everyone, but the necessity for physical distance has required us all to be creative and energetic about how we stay connected on Sunday mornings. Let's take a moment now to imagine the faces of our friends at Westside and to picture the spaces we keep open to welcome newcomers. For everyone, you're now invited to check in via the Zoom chat box, letting each other know who and how you are. And then, if you wish, please take a moment to send a quick text or email or loving thought to someone you care about. To continue these conversations, we will once again host a virtual coffee hour after the service today. Immediately following the postlude music, stay online by clicking the Zoom link that was included in this morning's Worship Blast email. That link will also be shared via the chat box near the end of this service. You'll be able to join in from there. The Zoom link will take us into a different kind of meeting format so that we can see each other's faces and take turns sharing. If the coffee hour gathering is large, we'll form smaller breakout groups which are assigned randomly. We hope that during the virtual coffee hour, you can catch up with those who are dear to you and meet some new folks too. Even as we shelter in place, our beloved community is staying very active. So now more than ever, it's vital that all members read the Westside Week electronic newsletter to stay current on the wealth of information that Reverend Deanna, our professional staff, and lay leadership provide to keep us all connected and engaged in the life of the congregation. Here are some important announcements to remember. As your stewardship team reminded us so clearly this spring, Westside begins with we. Deepest gratitude to everyone who has committed to pledging for the 2020-2021 congregational year. If you've not had a chance to do so yet, you can contact stewardship@wsuu.org and get the support you need to make your stewardship commitment. General Assembly, or GA, is the annual meeting of our Unitarian Universalist Association of Congregations, the UUA. This conference generally draws about 4,000 participants from all over the UU world to learn, worship, witness, connect, and make policy for the association through the right of conscience and the democratic process, our fifth principle. This year's GA was scheduled to take place in Providence, Rhode Island on June 24th to 28th. The UUA Board of Trustees has passed a resolution to make the 2020 General Assembly a 100% virtual event, dramatically increasing its access to congregations. Go to the GA website at uua.org/GA to check out all the amazing programs and register today. If you're interested in being a WSUU delegate for voting actions of the Assembly, contact Board President Jade Lowry. Speaking of putting the democratic process into action, all congregation members are invited to attend our first ever online annual meeting after the service on Sunday, June 7th. We will use a Zoom meeting format for presentations and discussion, and Google Forms for our voting actions. Agenda items will include electing the Board of Trustees slate, the nominating committee, and approving the annual budget for 2020-2021. Make sure this meeting is on your calendar for June 7. Regarding the annual meeting, our board wants you to know that they have approved a budget, a 2020-2021 board slate, transition plans for Reverend Christopher and Reverend Deanna, and has been making plans for the prospect of a full year of online church. You will hear more about some of these things in the coming week when your packet arrives through email to prepare you for our annual meeting. To hear more today, stop by the boardroom, Zoom room, during the virtual coffee hour. Finally, also for your calendar is the Leadership Assembly next Sunday, May 31st. This is the final Leadership Assembly meeting of the church year, and guest speaker Richard Kim will be joining us. Everyone currently in leadership positions is encouraged to attend, and all are welcome to join. Information will be in the Westside Week to participate through Zoom. A lot going on. A lot going on. So as we regather and center ourselves here, you will find the words of our congregational affirmation on your screen. One of the most important expressions of how we are bound together as a community of faith, children, youth, and adults, is this spoken affirmation. This is a statement of our highest values as Unitarian Universalists and the promises we make to each other at Westside to create our beloved community. Please join me. Love is the doctrine of this congregation. The quest for truth is our sacrament, and service is our prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge, to serve humanity in fellowship, thus do we covenant with one another. In a moment, we will engage in a collective act of generosity, offering you the opportunity to provide financial support to Westside by check or by text. As a congregation, we have decided to give away 1/3 of the undesignated financial gifts from the offering each week. Contributions for the month of May will be given to the White Center Food Bank. They are helping to feed a record number of people in need during this time. So you may give by text at the number 888-530-9056. Text edit to update your payment info. Thank you for your faithful generosity in helping to sustain our beloved community, while we receive this inspiring gift of music from Dr. Glenn Thomas Rideout, music director of the UU Congregation of Ann Arbor, Michigan. My Life Flows On in Endless Song is an early Quaker text set to a gospel tune.
My life flows on in endless song above its lamentation. I hear the reel, the far off hymn that hears a new creation. Through all the tumult and the strife, I hear the music ringing. It sounds an echo in my soul. How can I keep from singing? What though the tempest round me rolls, I know the truth it liveth. What though the darkness round me close, songs in the night it giveth. No storm can shake my inmost calm, while to the rock I'm clinging. Since love prevails in heaven and earth, how can I keep from singing? When tyrants tremble as they beat, the bells of freedom ring. When friends rejoice for far and near, how can I keep from singing? To these and sad and to thine, our thoughts to them are winging. When friends my shame are undefiled, how can I keep from singing? My life flows on in endless song of its lamentation. I hear the reel of far of him that hears a new creation. Through all the tumult and the strife, I hear the music ringing. It sounds an echo in my soul. How can I keep from singing? How can I keep from singing? How can I keep from singing? How can I keep from singing?
We are so fortunate that Scott Farrell, our music director, has a network of UU musicians that are now circulating these videos for use by congregations that come to us in that extraordinary gift of music. And thank you for your generous giving this morning and every day, your financial support, and all of the ways that you contribute to this congregation. We set aside time each week as a sacred community for reflection, to become aware of the deep moments in our lives, and to extend our compassionate care to those around us. In this intensely altered time, let us make collective space to hold tenderly the joys and sorrows that have filled our days. We hold in our care the sorrow and the joy of the class of 2020, graduates from schools and colleges whose commencements have been made virtual and whose next moves into the world of adulthood hold so many more question marks than usual. We hold in our care the sorrow of all who have lost loved ones to COVID-19, as well as extending our compassionate care to those suffering alone in homes, in hospitals, in senior housing, unable to receive visits from family and friends. And on this Memorial Day weekend, a blessing from the Reverend Charles F. Flagg. In honor of those we have known and loved in the past, in recognition of the gifts and sacrifices they have made on our behalf, and in our sincere hopes that we may be worthy of their memory, we light our candles, we give our thanks, and we offer our prayers. From within our own community, a sorrow from Roseanne Lorenzano. May is Asian Pacific American Heritage Month. Even when there's supposed to be celebration, it is with sadness and a sense of personal fear for myself and my son Albert that assaults and attacks continue to happen, like the one recently publicized in downtown Seattle. A joy from Jean and Alan Mendel, who are excited to have welcomed their fourth granddaughter, Odette Vera, born in Denver earlier this month. They also celebrated their 47th wedding anniversary this week. A joy from Ginger Brewer and the Partner Church team. When we are watching and listening to our Sunday Zoom service, it is also being watched by the Reverend Emma Shafinta, minister of our Transylvanian Unitarian Partner Church, at 8:30 p.m. in Romania. She and her husband, Shaba, wrote, "Thank you. We just participated in the online service. It was wonderful. Stay safe, all of you. This is amazing and exciting." Connections to our UU partners across the world. Finally, from Regina Brennan of our Community Outreach Ministry. Thanks to all who answered the call for food donations to the Welcome Table in White Center on the last 2 Saturdays. She says there was a stunning response from Westside. So let us hold in our hearts the joys and sorrows, both known and unknown, of our beloved community. May we feel held by a vast love. May we rest in this vast love, breathing in and breathing out. Let us join in song. I invite us to continue in the spirit of meditation with the poem Be Like Water by Kendra Ford, who is minister of the First UU Society of Exeter, New Hampshire. Run deep, run clear. Fill any space to its own dimension. Respond to the moon, to gravity. Change colors with the light. Hold your temperature longer than the surrounding air. Take the coast by storm. Go underground. Bend light. Be the one thing people need even when they're fasting. Eat boulders quietly. Be a universal solvent. Our anthem, Achavat Olam, is a choral rendition of a Hebrew prayer sung by the brothers Platt. Huge gratitude to Scott Farrell, our music director, who contacted the musicians for permission to use this video in our service. The theme of Ahavat Olam is that God provides love in good times and in bad. Nighttime, when there is darkness, is a time associated with danger. Nevertheless, there is divine protection at night, and the sun always rises in the morning. In the Jewish tradition, God's love is shown by illuminating the way to a holy life through the gift of the Torah, which articulates clear and direct expectations and provides deep eternal wisdom. The Torah both challenges humanity to engage with complicated textured truths and provides a roadmap to engage with those layers of complexity.
Okay.
Ahavat Olam, Beit Yisrael, Amcha ahavta, Torah u'mitzvot, Chukim u'mishpatim, Otanu limadeta. Ahavat Olam, Beit Yisrael, Amcha ahavta, Torah u'mitzvot, Chukim u'mishpatim, Otanu limadeta. Al ken Adonai Eloheinu, v'shoveinu u'meinu, nasirach bechukecha, v'nizmar ledivrei Toratecha, u'b'mitzvotecha, le'olam ba'avat olam. Beit Yisrael, Amcha ahavta, Torah u'mitzvot, Chukim u'mishpatim, Otanu limadeta. When we lie down, when we rise up, this joy will last forever. When we lie down, when we rise up, this joy will last forever, forever. Ahavat Olam, Beit Yisrael, Amcha ahavta, Torah u'mitzvot, Chukim u'mishpatim, Otanu limadeta. I think that was good.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. I am so glad to be with you over this Memorial Day weekend. I hope that you are all well and safe, healthy, and happy. And I look forward to a time when it is safe for us to resume our in-person togetherness. Nonetheless, I'm so pleased to be with you today. As many of you know, when I'm not before you on Sunday mornings or posting my life as a mother on social media, I'm a commissioner and the executive manager for a very small agency within the executive branch called Federal Mediation and Conciliation Service. As a federal mediator, I am tasked to assist unions and employers in the reconciliation of their differences. I do this by offering mediation and training to prevent potential and actual negative impacts on job action bad working relationships, strikes, and lockouts. As a neutral, I am given the tremendous privilege of diving deep into the inner workings of organizations, all of their financial, political, and administrative processes, goals, and philosophies. It is a privilege to be a neutral and to manage the amazing troop of neutrals in my district, and I take this task very seriously. Each day when I mediate, I walk into a room full of conflict. Two sides fighting for their concept of need, whether it be the Screen Actors Guild, longshoremen, teachers, NFL referees, nurses, or one of the thousands of other management union relationships that my agency provides services to. Each is on the same mission, to achieve their definition of fairness. And at its core, I, as a conflict resolution expert, see the pursuit of fairness to be at the center of all struggles, or rather the different perspectives on what fairness looks like. And those perspectives about what fairness is and what it is not are the drivers behind the polarization of positions. And this is not only the case at the bargaining table. This, in my mind, is the root of all conflict, different conceptions of fairness. Prior to being commissioned under President Obama, I was a negotiator on the Seattle waterfront. There, I was a management representative who advocated for the shipping and stevedoring companies. I learned a lot about labor relationships on the waterfront and about power differentials, and that perceptions often create realities, whether factual or not. The waterfront was ripe with polarization, and I was often at the helm, leading the charge, standing my ground. Collaborating or compromising was not a typical approach there. And prior to Seattle, I taught political science at the University of Idaho, where I learned a great deal while teaching and studying, delving into issues such as white-collar crime, disparate treatment in the judiciary, the difference between reality and perception within the underserved populations of this nation, and the politics that has created an unjust system. The study of political science really is the study of the history and methodology around competing for resources, whether it be power or glory, food or land, money or money. Politics is a competition, and in competition, someone always loses. And that is not only a problem, that is the problem. Fear of losing a competition seems to be an amazing driver amongst large populations of people. I will not deny that healthy competition can spur innovation and push oneself past where they may have thought their limits. Competition can also be good-spirited and fun. But when it comes to the distribution of resources, competition typically results in the most underserved amongst us being provided with less than what is helpful, less than what is, in my mind, fair. I think about social media as a means for communication on important topics. I recall photos of disabled veterans over the past year sitting roadside with cardboard signs asking for help. It is heartbreaking, and I would guess that all of us in this service would agree that those folks need help. But instead of the picture being used to ask for help for veterans, the title says something like, "Our veterans deserve better than illegals." Exhale. Those kinds of sentiments, completely repulsive in my mind, are an example of unevolved thinking on the part of many in this nation. People who do not know or refuse to see that this nation has vast resources that can be distributed in a way that assists all who are in need. Now, my opinions are just that, very subjective. But I like to think that I've done enough research or had enough experience to offer informed opinions. But they are definitely made through the left-leaning social justice mindset that I have, and that I dare say that most of us have in this service. As Unitarian Universalists, it is a fairly good bet as to which side of the fence the majority of us land politically. That, more often than not, reflects where our empathies lie in matters on most issues. But the truth is that in order to find a pathway forward, I, and everyone in general, must understand all sides of every conflict, and why all perceptions are important and demand consideration in order to create the best solution. And truthfully, any solution, whether it be policy or approach, is a best guess. There is rarely a right answer when it comes to decision making. There is only the best answer made by people with the best of intentions, hopefully, who have the best information, hopefully. And these problem-solving approaches are so rarely used in political decision making because, well, the power issue. Rare is it that a politician or individual in charge of an organization wishes to give away their power. Dealing with people who hold counter ideals and positions that are so far removed from your own is very difficult. As a professional neutral, I enter every set of negotiations with an open mind, searching for pathways, forward and middle ground on issues. But I can do that because there's no direct connection or benefit to me. But when I am personally engaged in a conversation on everyday topics where someone shows no empathy for others, no belief in science, or refuses to recognize the value of hard data, it is so perplexing and upsetting to me, and I'm not neutral under those circumstances. Well, as someone who is a conflict expert, I have amounted a great deal of thought, research, and practice about just that. Why are some people so rooted in their perceptions when the facts, once assessed and revealed, should lead them to a different conclusion? Why do people remain rooted in their hate or indifferent towards others? Why do they stick to a position when all valid data suggests otherwise? I want to briefly talk with you all today about the things that I believe are the main reasons for their polarization on data, on facts. They are zealots, anti-intellectualism, and power. And then see if we can unwind some of it to understand those drivers and how they can be addressed in everyday conversations. But first, let me define a few terms in the way that I intend to use them so that we're talking apples to apples. According to Webster's dictionary, a zealot is someone who is uncompromising in their pursuit of religious, political, or other ideals. And on a religious or a political spectrum, zealots can be both very far right and very far left. There's no value judgment in the word zealot. But what I find more interesting than a person's opinion on a topic is the way that they go about pursuing it. One of my favorite quotes by Emerson exemplifies this for me. "What you do speaks so loudly that I cannot hear what you say." Now, that varies a bit from the very definition of zealot by moving from substance to process. But to me, process and substance are so closely intertwined, they are like dimensions, like space and time. Tyranny and fanaticism can reside on both sides of the political and religious spectrum. And just a reminder, I make no value assumptions about zealoted positions. They can be completely just and moral, but they are simply not mainstream at this time. There's a saying in negotiations: the right deal at the wrong time is the wrong deal. Time matters, process matters, and thus it is not just what you say, but how and when you say it. With that in mind, I would like to talk a little bit about what I call productive zealots and unproductive zealots. Keeping in mind process, productive and unproductive zealots can be essentially saying and believing the same thing, but the difference is how, when, and why they do it. Let us take, for example, civil rights legislation of the 1960s. That legislation was not a new idea by any means. Those ideas permeated political rhetoric since the beginning of colonialization. People cared. People tried to make changes. But guess what? Being an abolitionist in the 1700s was being a zealot. Those folks were not mainstream and their views were not supported. And even abolitionists owned slaves, believe it or not, or benefited greatly from them. For 200 years, abolitionists, who later became civil rights advocates after the Emancipation Proclamation, fought for more equal rights. And of course, I say more equal because the goal of equality, they're still not holistically achieved today. So acknowledging that a common belief may exist, equality as an example, in zealoted positions, one that needs to evaluate the methodology used to relay that influence. After all, what is a strong opinion if not expressed and pursued? I think about the founders of this nation, and I purposely did not use the term founding fathers because there were so many women who did all that they were allowed to do and more to achieve independence and establish a new nation. So again, I think about the founders and their desire to break from Great Britain. Their concerns were not so very different than all of the other nations seeking independence from the crown. But war was the pathway that they chose after attempting other methodologies. And it was successful. For India, fast forwarding 200 years under the leadership of Mahatma Gandhi, they chose a peaceful pathway towards independence. His approach worked, but very differently than the Revolutionary War. Both goals were met, but in a very different way and at a very different point in time. Both positions were quite zealoted in the beginning, however. Look around at the people who motivate you, who inspire you, no matter the substance of the actual message. Is it their words, creating comfort, hope, spoken with gratitude and warmth? Is that what inspires you? Or is it shouts of rage and fear that motivate you into action? Does activism look like either of those examples, independent of the actual substance of the message? Individually, we all learn differently. We find energy differently, our needs are different, our desires are different. I, for example, have never been a fan of protests. The thought of being surrounded by like-minded people driven by demanding change actually turns me off. I would rather sit with a few people who hold differing opinions and have an intelligent debate, but that is just me. Well, I have been part of one protest in my life, and I have to say that I was all alone in my message. Dressed as a one-man protest band in sandwich boards that stated, "Love the troops, hate the administration," I showed up at my brother's National Guard deployment under the George W. Bush administration for his first Middle Eastern tour, to stand up for what so many in his squadron were thinking but couldn't say. I, in my anti-war gear, and he in his combat fatigues, appeared on the front page of many regional newspapers the following day. I was devastated as to his departure. He was proud that I used my freedom of speech to express it. The process is used to relay zealoted positions, and I would argue that anytime you are protesting, you are in fact supporting a zealoted position, for the simple fact that you are asking for and demanding change from the status quo. Anytime you do that, you have to tailor the process to meet your message. And that can be very tricky. Knowing one's audience is always an important element in decision making. I want to now transition a little to a commonly used method of justifying zealoted opinions, whether they fall left or right on the spectrum. This approach has been quite maddening to me as of late, and I expect that you will agree. Anti-intellectualism is one of the ways that zealots secure their rationale. According to Webster's Dictionary again, great resource, anti-intellectualism is hostility to and mistrust of intelligence, commonly expressed as assaults on education and philosophy, and the dismissal of art, literature, and science as impractical and politically motivated. Sound familiar? We have so much of it right now with anti-vaxxers, flat earthers, anti-climate activists, and COVID deniers. Of course, we may have always had it, but social media now, more than ever, gives folks a platform that did not exist in previous decades. This rationale, or lack of rationale, if you will, has been studied for nearly a century. In 1964, Richard Hofstadter won the Pulitzer Prize for his work, Anti-Intellectualism in American Life. In it, he finds that the presence of democracy in knowledge and education has created a system in which people feel they have the right to disagree with facts. I'll say that again because it still hits me. Something to think deeply about. The presence of democracy in knowledge and education has created a system in which people feel they have the right to disagree with facts. And also important that democracy has led people to support misinformation because everyone is entitled to their opinion. Just think about it for a minute. Does support for a democratic approach allow for anti-intellectual rhetoric to surface and grow? It is an interesting question to ponder, and quite possibly, and what I think, the solution might be worse than the problem itself, but let's set that aside. Imagine a time when you have encountered a friend or relative who believes something that you know to be false. And when you challenge them on the misinformation, they respond with distrust of mainstream thought. You then provide hard facts for their consideration. They refuse it, dismissing it with preformed responses or outcomes. And you sit perplexed, and they state they have the right to their opinion. And so I ask you, can one have an opinion on facts? We are now in a time where we fight against information that does not support our conclusions, insulating ourselves in social media, news sources, or voluntary associations that support our pre-formulated opinions on all things environmental, political, and religious. We find comfort here. We find community there. When was the last time you willingly went looking to learn more about something that you absolutely disagree with? It is painful. Turning on news sources that don't support your worldview is painful. Trying to understand the viewpoint of others that is so far removed from your own definition of morality is painful. It feels like the right thing to do to avoid such misinformation. But is it the right thing to do? The interesting part about anti-intellectual behavior is that it can be translated to a lot of various categories, areas of social science and religion included. So dismissing something without evidence or fake information dismisses a great deal of what people believe in the form of deities, morality, and other mysteries of life. So I offer this as consolation. Albert Einstein said, "The basic laws of the universe are simple, but because our senses are limited, we cannot grasp them. There is a pattern to creation." So that huge elephant aside, how do you debate someone who uses anti-intellectualism as their starting point? Well, as it turns out, the logic that they provide tends not to be the logic they believe, but the excuse they provide. And there's a difference. Have you ever heard of the ladder of inference? It is a flawed decision-making process whereby one's predetermined outcomes are set. And in order to provide the rationale for said outcome, one chooses only those pieces of evidence that support their conclusion, however incorrect. As an example, if I believe that I have bad luck, I would focus on all of the ways that I did not win the lottery and draw the best hand in cards or land my dream job. I would look only at those pieces of evidence to support my preformed conclusion. And the inverse is equally true. If I believe I had good luck, I would point to all those items that support that belief. Tunnel vision, eliminating all of the items that conflict with my perspective, is an element of anti-intellectualism that I see again and again. So producing data that opposes someone's worldview will not educate them because it's not evidence that leads them there in the first place. In one of the first services that I had the pleasure of doing with our bridge minister, we talked about connections. Reverend Deanna told us we are all connected with strings of similar experiences and backgrounds. In some form or another, we are connected. But it is up to us to discover what those are, to put ourselves out there in such a way that allows people to connect with us and to be open to receiving the connections from others. Most people who disagree with us do so on many topics, but the connections of our humanity are actually much more numerous. Only by spending more time together and Yes, spending more time with people who you disagree with. Can we illuminate those connections and have any shot at influencing people who think differently than we? A few years ago, NPR ran a story about one African American man who befriended Ku Klux Klan members and ultimately convinced 200 racists to hang up their robes for good. For 30 years, Daryl Davis, a blues musician, had spent his time talking with people who hated him, who wished him dead and don't know him. Daryl had made it his mission to let people know him, because how could you hate Daryl? He's a super good guy. And after meeting these members and talking with them time and time again, and asking hard but non-confrontational questions, and transitioning from perceived enemies to friends, one by one, the KKK member would evolve and give Daryl his robe as a symbol of peace and friendship. And Daryl, well, he keeps those robes in his home as a trophy of success. It is important to remember that through all of this, Daryl's viewpoint, like those of the founders of this nation, and even now I'm air quoting founders because of course this nation was already founded by its indigenous people. So Daryl, the founders, Mahatma Gandhi, and any other person who is protesting in their own way is seen as an extremist to the opposing side. They view your social justice tactics as an attack on their goals, whether it be power, money, or something else. You, of course, see your activism as moral, just, and necessary. Tripping over a dollar to save a penny is something that I see again and again at the bargaining table from both sides. But we are often all guilty of it in our everyday lives as well. When we do not see or refuse to see the whole picture, and that whole picture includes those you disagree with. When we have a greater valuation of us than we do of them, we are guilty of it. Political positions and economic philosophies help polarize people, and a refusal to see our own collective selves as being holistically connected drives a skewed cost-benefit analysis. It is up to us to take a step back, ask questions, and fully evaluate positions from all points of view. But that requires us to seek all points of view. So, how do you disarm an anti-intellectual who stays rooted in misinformation? They cannot be educated because it's not facts that motivate them. It is the fear of losing their power. By removing the fear and allowing them a place of comfort where they do not think that their very life, their very way of life is at risk, they might open themselves up to making connections. I don't generally like to talk to people I disagree with, but I do as a professional and sometimes as a matter of personal practice to expand my understanding of things I don't understand and don't agree with, and to illustrate that we do not have to think alike to love alike. When it comes down to it, people stay rooted in their zealoted ideas, refusing to acknowledge hard facts because it threatens their power. And you know who is not a threat? A friend. Just ask Daryl.
Thank you, Jennifer, for the gift of your experience and your wisdom and for your service to this congregation. Let's take some moments to breathe together and let those words from Jennifer wash over us and think about how we can take them out with us today. And now I invite us to join in body or spirit as we sing hymn 1031, Filled with Loving Kindness, which was adapted by UU musicians from a traditional Buddhist meditation.
May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be whole. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be peaceful and at ease. May you be whole. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be peaceful and at ease. May we be whole.
Thank you, Scott, for leading us in these hymns. Our service will end today with our fivefold amen and then a postlude from John Hanson. Once again, gratitude to Jennifer Disotell and appreciation for all our musicians. And thanks to the worship support team, most especially Kevin Lane Cummings, today's VJ, who literally made our collective worship experience possible. A special shout out to the folks who are working with Scott as Vizio editors, Ivy Ficara, Kira Maynard, and Paula Van Hagen. Now remember, during the postlude, look in the chat area for the Zoom link to the virtual coffee hour where we can visit with each other until 12:30. And there will be a separate link for conversation with your Westside board members, particularly if you have questions about the June 7 congregational meeting. Thanks to you all for being a part of this worship service and this beloved community. And now you're invited to join together in body and spirit, wherever you are, for our closing words, and as we release the flame with this blessing from the Reverend Cynthia Landrum. We leave this gathered community, but we don't leave our connection, our concerns, our care for each other. Our service to each other, to the world, and to our faith continues. Until we are together again, friends, be strong, be well, be true, be loving. Keep breathing. We will extinguish our chalice. We will release our flame.